Testing. Can you hear it now?
In an effort to set the tone for y'all's future meetings, we'll go ahead and get started. I would not ask for, because we have no chairman yet, to officially call the meeting to order, but it is 7 o'clock, so with the commission's indulgence, we'll go ahead and get started. Seeing no one nod no, we'll go ahead and get started then. For the sake of establishing the fact that we have a quorum of the commission here, I'm going to ask Ms. Warner to please call the roll. And as an administrative matter, green light is on for these, and it is very difficult to hear in this room because of the high ceiling, so please always remember to use your mic. Ms. Warner.
Thank you. Good evening. Commissioner Ackland, present. Commissioner Burke.
Present.
Commissioner Councilman, absent. Commissioner Daring.
Present.
Commissioner Hubach.
Present.
Commissioner Moorhead.
Present.
Commissioner Stidham.
Present.
Commissioner Wiggins.
Present.
Commissioner Wilson.
We do have a quorum present. To that end, it's not on the agenda, but all of our commissions normally begin by saying the Pledge of Allegiance, so if I could ask you to please rise.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For our opening remarks this evening and to welcome you all, I would like to introduce Mayor Turnbow to come forward.
Since it's my first opportunity to address the group, I do have some prepared remarks. One is to thank you for your service. We cannot thank you enough for your service here on the City Charter Review Commission. There's quite a passion from those who have volunteered for this duty. Although it serves as the foundation for our city government, few people truly know and understand a charter's importance and how it can and will influence our decision-making process in the future. We do not want to underestimate or understate the importance of Raymore City Charter and the work you will be doing. This is only the third time in the city's history that we've assembled members to perform a comprehensive review of the charter and suggest meaningful changes. It can seem tedious, detailed, and laborious, but it is in those changes, or even sometimes the minor details, where you will be making a significant contribution to our future and the future of our community. As volunteers on this commission, you will be doing the yeoman's work. Even before we dive in and begin the official review, I want you to know that work you will be doing is appreciated by me, the city staff, and the citizens of Raymore. It is not an easy task, but I know we have pulled together an incredibly dedicated group willing to take on this challenge and do it above and beyond expectations. I want to thank you all for being a part of this process. I sat, when I was in Raytown, I actually sat on a charter review group that pushed for, I wasn't actually elected to the commission, but I sat on a team of people, and we saw a lot of great work done there that unfortunately didn't get passed over there in that town. And so when I came here in 1999 as police chief, I was so excited to work for a community that seemed to have their stuff together, and they did. I mean, it really has changed, the charter changed the overall complexity of the ability of this group, and the quality of the people who live here and the quality of people who volunteer to do these type of things. I can't be prouder to be mayor of a community than I am here today before you. So I thank you very much for your dedication to this. It's going to be a process that Will be tedious at times, will be challenging at times. You'll walk away from here and you'll know that you've got a lot of homework to do. But I think in the end, it will really be satisfying to each of you to see the accomplishments that do occur. So thank you for being here. And at this time, we do wish to move into the next phase for you all to kind of discuss amongst yourselves, maybe even introduce yourselves, explain where you're from, what ward. I know most everybody has seen the list of candidates, but Mr. Ackland, if you could start off, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and we'll move around the table in a counterclockwise fashion so that folks can kind of get to know one another, if you would.
First of all, let's say good evening to everyone. My name is Calvin Ackland. My lovely wife and I moved here about 13 years ago. We raised our children here. Now we're raising our grandchildren here. So we definitely have a vested interest in Raymore. Before we moved here, it was a toss-up between Lee Summit and Raymore. And I think the lights, when I first got here, all the pretty lights and the eating places won out. So I think we made a good decision. I'm in Ward 4. I recently retired from the Jackson County Family Court. I was a mediator there. So now I'm retired. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I'm just anxious to make a contribution and I'm proud and privileged to be on this board.
My name is Joe Burke. I've been a teacher, I think this is my 24th year, and I've been in RAPAC maybe 18, 19 years teaching at the high school. I'm also a Ward 2 council member and really have found in working in Raymore government really the next interest in what I'm hoping to do after I'm done teaching. Just continue looking at things like this.
Good evening, my name's Mike Wilson. I live in Creekmore subdivision. Been there about 8 years now, built a home there after I retired. My background is in law enforcement. Retired from the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, worked with Homeland Security for about 10 years. Currently working with the Kansas City Crime Commission. So I moved out here with the intent of trying to retire. Retirement wasn't quite enough, and so I'm back working full-time, enjoying it. I'm actually involved with a community service program for people who are convicted in municipal courts to get them out in the communities and pay back their community for the crimes that they've been involved with and convicted of. So we're also looking at maybe even trying to start a program like that here in our community. So pleasure to meet everyone. I attend some of the city council meetings, so some of the faces are familiar to me, but finally get to know you and meet you, and looking forward to serving our community.
My name's Derek Moorhead. I'm the city council member for Ward 2. I'm also the mayor pro tem for Raymore. 43 years ago, my father moved us out here when he was working under the base commander at Richard Squire to help decommission the base, and we stayed here. We were roughly the 900th person to be in town, and 58 Highway wasn't even fully paved back then, and I've been here ever since. I am part of the first father-son council member team here in Raymore. My father was North Ward alderman prior to the establishment of a charter here in Raymore back in the early 80s, and so I've kind of stepped up a little bit in his shoes. I don't think I'll still do as well as he did when he was here, but I aspire to. I am a practicing attorney. I'm entering my 27th year working in the legal field. I'm a lecturer at Washburn University School of Law, as well as I am the Chief Deputy Auditor for Cass County. I have my law office over in Ward 4, so I even practice here, and I've been on the council 4 years now and enjoy every minute of it. I'm looking forward to working with everybody.
Okay, my name is Stephanie Daring. Let's see, where do I begin? I graduated from Belton a long time ago, and Then my family moved here to Raymore in 1998, and then I served on city council a couple times, a couple tours. And then I authored the charter, and then I came back 10 years after that and rewrote it. And now I'm back again to rewrite it. I retired as a federal employee after 38 and a half years. I retired as a records officer, and I will tell you that what Hillary Clinton has done with those records is illegal. And if I had done that, I would have been hung by the cross. So I'm well aware of what the facts are on that, but I know what we're doing, and I know what we have to do, what we have ahead of us to do. So.
Good evening. My name's Tim Stidham. I live in Ward 1 with my wife, Michelle. We've lived there for 5 years. Calvin, I enjoy living here too, but I grew up in Lee Summit. Remember Lee Summit since 1963.
Wow.
And really, I remember some of the growth phases as a small business owner in Lee Summit for 12 years. A lot of the growth phases, a lot of the things that where we're at right now as a city have gone through some of that in Lee Summit as you increase your business base and your subsidies and that thing. So I'm happy to be here. My passion for working here with the city started with the parks. I think our trails are some of the finest that any communities in the metropolitan area and maybe even in the state of Missouri have. And I had a knee replacement 5 years ago, and those trails were very valuable to recuperating and rehabbing my knee replacement. So I love Raymore, look to be here for a long time, and happy to be here.
I'm Charlene Hubach, and I was born here in Raymore. I'm one of the few that is a native daughter of this town. I'm the retired postmaster here. I spent 30 years in the post office, and so you know how I feel about everybody losing their rural routes over to Belton. It was a hardship for me to see. Raymore is extremely important to me. It has been my hometown, and it's been after my family. It's been the love of my life, and I'm very thankful that I've been able to be on the council and that I'm able to be on the Charter Commission. I have not done that before, but I have carried petitions, and I've knocked on everybody's door getting signatures on it. I've done that 5 times, and I'm glad to turn that over to anybody else that wants to do it. Thank you all for being a part of this and letting me be a part of it.
My name's Matt Wiggins. I live in Ward 3. I'm also a Creekmore resident. I'm probably the newest resident here amongst the group. I've been here, July was 3 years, so fairly new to the town. But grew up just on the other side of the state line, so I am born and raised here in the Kansas City area. And I kind of remember back in the 80s when Raymore was a town, small town really far away. And never thought I'd move here, but I'm sure glad we did. It's a great place to live. Love our community. Yeah, I'm excited to be a part of this and start dipping my toe into city government issues.
At this point, I'd like for, well, I can just introduce them if you'd like. We have our city clerk, Jeannie Werner. We have our seated city attorney right now that comes to our council meetings, Jonathan Zur. He also attends our Planning and Zoning Commission meetings. Joe Willerth, part of the same team that assists us with our legal issues. And of course, Mr. Jim Fearborn, our city manager. So at this point, I guess I would open it up to those to discuss amongst yourselves the potential for selecting a chair of this group in order to really have a steering person to move forward and assist with the guidance of the process of this. We too, between Stephanie and Mr. Castleman, who couldn't be here tonight, we do have them as from a historical perspective, as Ms. Hubach, who was very involved in the last process. who have a lot of background. In fact, I see Stephanie brought her notebook with her from the last go-around, and she's probably got 3 or 4 other volumes, but has condensed it to one, bless her heart. So anyway, I would open it up to the floor to anybody who might wish to discuss the potential for the selection of a chair.
I had wanted to mention several things. We need a chair and a vice chair, and I would suggest that Mr. Moorhead be our chair and that Mr. Burke be our vice chair. And the reason I suggest that is because not only because they're council members, but this is the first time that we're going to be reviewing city ordinances at the same time that we are reviewing the charter. And they would be, by being mayor pro tem and being active there, then they already have a step up knowing what has to be done. And I think if there's any holes that need to be filled, they can do it. So that would be my recommendation, Mr. Moorhead for chair, Mr. Burke for vice chair. And I don't know what we plan to do about secretary. Who's going to take notes?
If I may, Ms. Warner has volunteered to be, graciously volunteered, to be at every single one of the meetings and serve as secretary to the commission. So it would not be necessary to have one of you at the table. I would also point out, your meetings are not live being broadcast, but your meetings are all being taped. So she will be able to rely on those tapes the exact same way that, because they'll be stored here at City Hall, and we actually intend to be bringing to the City Council minutes of each of your meetings. And so by benefit of the tape, the same way she's able to look at the City Council meetings, I would recommend to the council that you avail yourself of her services, not as note taker, but as actually secretary to this commission.
Does there need a motion to be made on that?
Yes, I think that it should actually be, first you need to get a chair to run the rest of this meeting. So I would suggest that you begin one at a time with a motion, a nomination for chair. That would have to be seconded and then voted on by the commission.
I move that we appoint Mr. Moorhead as our chair. I nominate him.
Are there any other nominations?
I would nominate Stephanie with her historical background.
Okay. Any other nominations? For lack of a chair at this point, I'll go ahead and lead the vote count here on this. So we'll go ahead and close the nominations at this time. We have nominated Mr. Moorhead and Ms. Daring. At this point, I'll go ahead and take a hand vote on Mr. Moorhead. All those in favor of Mr. Moorhead to chair? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then Ms. Daring, 1, 2. Okay. Absent Mr. Castleman. It looks like you're it, Mr. Moorhead. If you'd like to take the meeting from here, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I mean, I appreciate it, both nomination and recognition of Ms. Daring's involvement, and so I'll go ahead. Do we want to do I'm going to ask whether we want to do a motion for a vice chair. So I'll entertain a motion for or against a vice chair.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
It's been a while since I've been involved in some sort of proceeding like this. I guess, what are the responsibilities of a chairman, and therefore does it necessitate a vice chair? Obviously based on, I guess you could call it extracurricular activities, would it be ideal to have a secondary chair? Not that this is a huge group, but with
Absolutely.
the involvement.
Absolutely. I would only remark, and this is again just as a one of 9, I see my role as more of just a standoffish moderator. We're going to lead with 9 of us. We're not too large of a group that I think we're going to run amok. We want to have good deliberation and flesh things out very well. So I'm not going to be rushing us through things. So really, as far as my role, I'm here just to make sure we don't turn this into a 4-hour evening. But if we need time to deliberate and discuss things, I'm not gonna cut things off either. So, I literally just see my role as, really kind of a stepped-up secretary, where I'm just there to make sure an agenda is in place, that we're following a general agenda. I don't see myself as the leader per se. So I'm with you. I would probably go against a vice chair personally, just because I think the 9 of us, can keep things under control.
Well, the last time that was only used in case you were not here.
Stephanie used it. I can't hear it otherwise.
The
Thank
only
you.
time that would have been used in the past is if you were not here.
And so, like I said, these
Like
are all
when-
good reasons to consider. I'm wide open, but does that give you a little better idea of?
Yeah, and I, if the main purpose of a vice chair is in your absence, I don't see any reason not to establish a vice chair. If that is the sole purpose of that position, over the many months that this will take and the many meetings, it's inevitable that there will be a time where one will be necessary. So might as well establish that at now.
Charlene, do you remember how many months it took us last time?
That's correct. It was nearly a full year.
Oh, my gosh.
So, like I said, I'm completely comfortable with
Am
that.
I done?
I will more as a footnote point out of the 7 years that I have served either on the Planning and Zoning Commission and the council, I've actually only missed one total meeting. So I will say, if we go a year, the vice chair, whoever wishes to be or gets nominated, don't fear that you're gonna be doing loads of work, because I do like to come up here, so I will be in attendance a lot, so. And again, the group will kind of lead itself a little as well.
Yeah, because you pretty well gel.
Right.
Say, based on that comment, we definitely need with you boasting you only missed one, we definitely need a vice chair.
Because he made the comment, it's going to happen.
So do we have a nomination?
Joe Burke.
Okay, Mr. Burke is received as a candidate. Any other nominations?
I would nominate Stephanie based on her experience.
Stephanie Daring is received as a nomination.
I was also gonna nominate Stephanie Daring as well.
Thanks.
Are there any additional people being nominated? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and with a show of hands. I'll start with Mr. Burke since he was nominated first. A show of hands for Mr. Burke. Okay, I see 1 for Mr. Burke. Show of hands for Ms. Daring.
Thanks, y'all.
It is 7 for Ms. Daring. She is the vice chair. Now, the next, since we're taking care of this administrative step, let's go ahead and formally address the issue of Ms. Warner being our group secretary. Do I have a nomination regarding Ms. Warner?
Nominate.
Okay? Okay. No, well, is there, before we do, since right now we're just doing votes, nothing more formal, we'll start doing a motion and a second. Ms. Warner is nominated to be the secretary. Are there any other alternatives to Ms. Warner? Okay.
The only one I could think of would be the deputy city clerk. Would there be any reason to why we would need to have involved the deputy city clerk when we've got the city clerk to work for us?
Well, from a discussion standpoint, I would remark that while I have a great deal of respect for Ms. Hill as well, Ms. Warner's already here. I will jokingly say, if she's volunteering for the punishment, I kind of don't want to disappoint her. But at the same time, I also believe that with Ms. Warner's help, there probably will come a time where she will probably enlist Ms. Hill for a little bit of assistance as well. So I believe we're kind of getting them as a package deal as is with this nomination.
Jean, you're getting paid for this, right? Right? I'm just making sure, yeah.
She should. Okay.
It's after hours.
Seeing no other nominations, just for the formality, show of hands, all in favor of Ms. Warner. And the vote is unanimous.
We want to set the time and date and everything.
Yes, moving on to item 4. Today was selected just to get this started, but we do have 9 people with 9 different lives, so respectfully, we want to be considerate of everybody's schedules, especially so we can have a lot of involvement. Is there any recommendation or any discussion on this topic? Mr. Fairborn.
Thank you, sir. Staff report. The last time that the Charter Review Committee met, your meetings were held at 7 p.m. on Wednesday nights. I would point out to the Charter Review Commission that Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday nights are completely booked for this room throughout, gosh, all the way through next winter. It's one of the reasons we're building a building back here. Kind of limits you to Wednesday nights as far as an open night is concerned for this room, if this is where you're going to meet. And right now, the only other place we have for you to meet is either the Public Works break room or the Park House before we tear it down. Again, one of the reasons we need the building is for things just like this, so that we have other locations for you to meet. Right now, however, yeah. So right now, we're kind of limited as far as those locations are concerned, but there's also the opportunity, as far as location is concerned, if you do like the amenities that this room provides, and you were wanting to think out of the box of Wednesday night, there's earlier, 4 o'clock meetings, the room would be available at any time. Friday night meetings, everybody winces. Saturday day, Sunday afternoon, those would all be available to you, but I'm hearing the whine. What are you, crazy?
And there's Taco Tuesday at El Dorado.
There you go. Other locations are available. But I thought I'd let you all know.
Yes, sir.
What is, or what has historically been, is to say, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, what, I guess, because that's something for me, and I don't know if Mike's involved again this year or not, but we have bowling league on Wednesday nights. If it's a once a month or something, then no big deal. But if it's a weekly thing, that makes it very difficult to work around extracurricular activities.
I have church, small group on Wednesday nights also, too.
Okay. I tell you what, before we pick the day of the week, why don't we talk more large scale before we get to small? Can we have a little bit of an update as far as what was the pattern of schedule for the last review? And this, either Stephanie, staff, either one.
While Ms. Staring is looking up, Mr. Willerth indicate, who was also here, of course, has the institutional memory, and my recollection is they started once a month, and then they accelerated, and by the end, they were meeting to meet the deadline, because of course you have to finish your work within 1 year. By the time that year was up, they were meeting much more frequently. They were calling the next meeting at a meeting.
Okay.
That sounds pretty realistic.
I think they were on Wednesday evenings, Derek.
Okay. Okay.
This doesn't really tell me much here.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and throw out to you guys, as I work on large-scale projects, I tend to find that I like to get a quick jump out of the gate just because I anticipate delays. So it's always one of those, you try to get a little ahead, so as you slow down, you kind of fall into your expectation time. While I by no means want to encourage that we have to meet weekly, I would probably recommend maybe for a couple of meetings, we go every 2 or 3 weeks, just to kind of set a pattern, especially since tonight's agenda is pretty light. We can keep the, digestible chunks of the meetings relatively modest up front, but I would like to kind of see us pick up a little pace.
What is the overall scope? I mean, we've been handed this syllabus here, and there's a lot of things in here. What do we have a plan of attack, or do we have a method of how we're going to approach this? Do we have key things, key items that we're going to focus on here? I just kind of like to know what our scope is.
That was actually going to be one of the things I recommended was our very first task as far as homework and to come back in the next meeting, that we try to set some expectation and try to set at least a scope of what we want to do. Now, personally, I would posit that I did not enter into this review with the expectation of an agenda where I had key sections of the charter that I wanted to address, especially because other people will have them too. And I'd hate to start cherry picking and moving around too much where we kind of lose sight of each chapter by themselves. So I wanted to be a little more linear and just kind of start from the beginning and look big picture. With that being said, I also don't want to rob anybody of any idea that if you do have a specific charter section or sentence even that you feel is relevant to kind of flesh out, I'd like to do that. So I think that first meeting is where we need to kind of decide for ourselves the scope and how much food we want on our plate. And I know staff wanted to make a comment.
Well, I would comment just historically, Derek, that the past 2 charter commissions have started from the start of the charter and proceeded through reviewing each code provision to the end of the charter. They met on the first and third Wednesdays, and the charter is like a constitution, and so some did not require much modification, discussion, or whatever, but some had very interesting political and legal aspects, and there would be extensive discussion of them depending on the input from sometimes citizens, sometimes from staff, has operating questions that come up with some of them. So historically, that's kind of how it's proceeded, and before the agenda, and it's not necessarily right, but the way it was done before is they'd lay out, these are the sections we'll be discussing on that night, so everybody should bring their ideas or questions or issues about those particular charter sections, so it's published ahead and the public would know if they wanted to come and comment on it.
At the conclusion of your review, you should have like 4.
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Ms. Schubach, one moment. Mr. Zerr, did you have an added comment?
I was only going to add in, I believe after the last charter review, you only proposed 4 different changes to the charter after going through all 14 sections of it the last go-around. I could be wrong on that, but that was my recollection.
Well, Mr. Van Hooser was an excellent chairman and helped put together the first document. And for those of you, historically, our charter follows a Model 1 and follows the City of Lee Summit one, which was adopted like 1 year before it. And I think he, as a chair, would say, if it's working now and has worked well for us, there's, I want to hear a need case as to why there needs to be a need for change. And so many were presented, only a few were adopted by an entire commission following discussion.
Okay. Ms. Schubach?
We're running into the winter session, and that means we're going to have bad days. So we better start meeting twice a month while the weather is good and we can get to it before we get into January and February and not be able to do anything because of the weather. Sometimes that's the problem for us. And another question that I would have, do we have to start at 7 o'clock? Can we start a little bit earlier? What about the rest of you that work? Maybe you can't. But when in wintertime, 7 o'clock's pretty dark.
Well, okay.
And I like to work in the day. I work better in the daylight hours than I do in the night hours.
Okay, to keep the digestible chunks here, let's stick to volume per month before we get to this exact time, because we don't even know the day yet. Is there any other thought as far as how often to meet each month? Mr. Wiggins?
I guess not to dive into a different chunk, but I guess historically, and again, that I just use that as a good basis, were these hour-long meetings, half hour? Obviously, the more discussion, I assume, the longer the length of time. But I mean, it's, it's an average of 45 minutes to an hour. Because that, obviously, if it was, hey, they're 3-hour meetings, I would want a 3-hour meeting every week, but I'm much more flexible to the idea of meeting more often, in smaller chunks.
Sure. Mr. Stidham? Oh, Mr. Fearborn?
Subject to Mr. Willith correcting me, it was variable. There would be, if there was a section, there were nights when it would go, similar to council meetings, it would go 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Sometimes they came in and the section that had been assigned, there wasn't a lot of input. More of the input was from the public than from anybody else. And the Charter Commission heard that and ruled that there weren't going to be any changes to that particular section, or made the consensus opinion there weren't going to be changes, and they'd be out of here within the hour. But it is variable.
I will say, as a teacher, I always, when I plan a lecture, I always kind of plan on a target time, and I know the longer that I'm talking to students, the less they're paying attention. So for me, I would at least myself enter into this with the idea of an expectation of about an hour and a half expected time for a meeting, and then knowing that if we hit something where we go a little longer, that's where we push that 2-hour mark, and we kind of let the room guide itself. I mean, fatigue eventually starts setting in, so we have to respect that. But you can expect from me that I would produce an agenda that would have about an expected hour and a half of work time.
How many of us could meet at 6? How many of you all can meet at 6? 6 o'clock. Yeah.
Okay, and are we comfortable with twice a month at this point?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're expecting 2 days a month, I mean, is there any concern or any thought on that?
Not on 2 nights, but we have a commitment on Wednesday night, but that seems to be the most popular night.
No, actually, I'm opening it wide open on that, because again, respectfully, while this is a wonderful location, especially with microphones and all the other amenities and with staff, I'm not opposed to going off-site to another location if it would fit. So to me, I guess I should say, with the exception of Monday nights from 7 to 9, I mean, everybody's schedule is equally valuable. So we want 9 people here. So let's, what would any of you suggest?
Well, I wish it wasn't a Wednesday night, but.
Okay.
Thinking of my personal schedule, honestly, Thursdays are fantastic.
Me too.
That's just my personal, and especially if this thing does go a year. Again, just based on my own selfishness, I also am in a golf league during the summer. So 40 out of 52 Wednesdays, I have stuff and have weekly for multiple years.
Mr. Fearborn, what does the first and third Thursdays look like here?
Court night.
Ah, that's right. I should know that. I don't get to practice there anymore. What about first and third Tuesdays?
Planning and zoning is first and third. Arts Commission is the second Tuesday, and Park Board is the fourth Tuesday. Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday nights, all 4 weeks of the month are taken in this room.
Okay. Before I suggest an alternative, Mr. Burke, do you have a comment?
I was going to ask, how many of the staff that are present have commitments that are associated with those nights? Other than, planning and zoning, Mr. Zur?
Oh, yes, Mr. Zur would be at planning and zoning.
That's something else to
And the mayor.
address as far as our staff. We need them.
Well, again, we can meet in another location as well. I don't expect, the public is welcome to attend. I doubt we'll have a huge surge of citizen involvement from any of these meetings. So there is also other rooms we could look at. But let me throw in an alternative. Would anybody be opposed to a Saturday morning? Okay.
Yes.
Fair enough. How about a Sunday evening?
Personally, Sunday evening would be probably one of my second choices, unless, you know, we ever did like I hate getting up early, but, you know, a weekday morning. But my personal schedule is much more flexible in the mornings. But.
Before I get to, Mr. Ackland,
Personally, Sunday evenings would not work for me.
okay?
Any other days other than Sundays would be great for me, any days, because I'm very flexible. Meeting outside would not be a problem for me either.
Okay, well then let's try the alternative here. Let's get back to some of the other days. Is a 4 o'clock time outside of the realm of possibility?
I'm okay with it. I don't know about anybody else.
Not for you?
I work at 5 o'clock.
Oh, okay,
There's no way I
okay.
could be here.
My wife would not be okay with that. We're driving people places every day at 4:30.
Mr. Fearborn?
If the commission would be flexible to moving, if you did not complete a topic and you were disciplined enough to keep it to an hour and a half, Monday evening, 3 of you at 5 o'clock to 6:30, 3 of you would be up here anyway if everyone was available at 5 o'clock twice a month when you first started.
And I appreciate that, but I'm hesitant with the 5 o'clock only because you're walking out of the office at 5 o'clock. You need travel time. I mean, and I think there needs to be some preparation to be able to come in here and sit and be productive. I would not, if 5 o'clock is a work hour, I wouldn't want to start before 5:30.
You're speaking for him, can he?
No, I totally agree with that. There's no way. I work 31st and Broadway, and with the traffic, there's no way I could be here. If it was for a limited number of weeks, I might be able to rearrange some flexibility in my schedule. But to do it for a year, I don't think I can get away that frequently from work to do that.
Okay. There's only one other time we have not talked about, and that is Friday evening. I'm thinking of the calendars. This is the only day we didn't talk about.
You presented the option, and I think the option is not well received.
Fair enough, fair enough. I would suggest, I mean, all I can do is run down the calendar here. I can, what about early mornings? Mr. Ackland?
No, when you say early mornings, what are we talking about?
I'm a lazy lawyer and only see 8 o'clock once a day. No, I'm not that bad, but I could meet as early as 7:30, 8 o'clock. I'm wide open. I'm wide open. I know, let me put it this way. I am confident that the 8 of us and Mr. Castleman will be able to find a time. We're just going to get creative here.
Well, I think we've addressed 6 out of 7 days and 22 out of 24 hours, and so far it honestly seems like Thursday night. So as beneficial as this room is, let's start thinking outside the box, because that seems to be, everybody seems that a Thursday evening is honestly what works best. If I received the notion from everybody in the city staff's ability that support us, this room is wonderful, but is booked up as it is. That doesn't seem like it's a very viable option.
Again, what is staff's availability on Thursday nights to be here?
Good point.
Staff is available.
Okay.
What starts on Thursday night here? At what time?
Court begins at, basically, the room is not available from 6 o'clock
What's
on.
court, isn't it?
Yeah, and I would say if we do the Thursday night, the only thing I would add to that is we are losing a lot of the collateral rooms as well. Mr. Marshall uses one of the rooms. We have other court staff. I mean, they're to the point to where we have people in folding tables sitting in the hallway.
How did we get it tonight?
I'm sorry?
How did we get it tonight?
We moved court.
Oh,
Court is over in Belton tonight.
Why don't we just move court every Thursday? I'm just kidding.
I want that judge happy. But, and about 80 people want him happy too. Well, I will say this, with the council, we have 9 members on this council, including the mayor, and when we have executive sessions, we will take staff and we will use the executive conference room right next to us. And while, depending on the number of staff that regularly shows up, sometimes that close of a space will precipitate some expeditious meetings. We can get it, if we're cramped, we can get in and out. But I will say it is functional, and it's functional enough table space that we would be able to spread things out and we would work and be very functional. With that being said, I know that there are also times when some of the Tuesday groups also don't always have meetings. So in those particular nights, we could also step back into this room. For example, planning and zoning does not always meet. And Mr. Fearborn, what nights do they meet?
First and third.
Is it the first and third?
First and third.
So I would actually go back and suggest, what if we did 6 o'clock on Tuesdays, the first and third Tuesdays, meeting in the conference room unless this room is available?
Sounds good to me.
Show of hands in favor of first and third Tuesdays at 6 o'clock.
that's great.
Strangely enough, it works. And if anything, occasionally I'll see if I can drive Mr. Faulkner nuts and get him to cancel the meetings. I'll mention Urban Chickens.
We hope you, by the end of and again, once April gets here, we can provide you a much more comfortable place to be meeting over in the
Fair
municipal center.
Fair enough. Okay, so it sounds like we have place, dates, and times, and frequency being twice a month.
I would like to remind all of us here that I have a cochlear implant, which means that I'm kind of hard of hearing, and everybody has to use the microphone or I don't hear you.
And absolutely, we'll definitely respect that. Moving on to item 5, other. Does anyone else have any other issues we'd like to talk about?
I was just going to say, the smaller room, are you able to hear better in that smaller room? You're not.
I have to have the microphone.
Okay.
Mr. Fearborn, I understand that these mics tend to get used in here, although actually I see the mics up on the dais and they use the dais mics, but aren't some of these for staff during the planning and zoning meetings, so they would need to be at those tables?
Yeah, these can only be used in here because they're wired. You're wired into the floor right now. This is a brand-new system.
Do we still
But we
maintain?
still have the wireless mics. The advantages of those in this room is that they run through our speaker system. We can use them in that room. They each have a little speaker on the front of it. Perhaps we can work with Mrs. Hubach to get her system plugged into that speaker.
Okay. And Ms. Hubach, I would personally, Ms. Hubach, I would personally suggest, since you know the construction of that room, that you sit on an end where you can see everybody's face and mouth, since I've known you in the past to be able to, it helps you follow along when you can see what we're saying.
Yes, I try not to miss much.
And we don't want you to. We definitely don't want you to. Okay, so any other topics other than on other?
Did you say at 6 o'clock?
6 p.m.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
One of the things that we will need to figure out for that room is how to tape you all.
Absolutely.
So there may be a little bit of an intrusive camera, but we have a very good IT department. We'll try to keep that as simple as possible within the room.
Okay.
Mainly, the audio is the main thing for Ms. Warner when we're going back for your minutes.
Okay?
I like the configuration of this here, of the triangle. It makes it easy because I can see everybody's face. I really like that.
Well, I tell you what, when we have this room, I think we do the same construct. The nice thing is that table in there is somewhat rounded, so we all still will have a reasonable amount of face-to-face viewing of each other.
So that if we're meeting in here, the commission likes this?
Yes.
Very good. We call this the wedge of knowledge when I'm telling them how to set the room up, so no pressure, sir.
Oh, the jokes are flooding into my head too fast. Okay, under other, although we do have one member of the public, before I get to that, I do want to say, as far as a little bit toward the agenda for the next meeting, I would like to say, one, I think it is important that we talk about the scope and our approach and how we intend to address this, and I'd like to kind of talk that out so everybody's on the same page. In addition, I would like to ask that Mr. Willerth and/or Mr. Zur give us a primer on the charter and the construct of the charter and the nature of this type of administrative law. You know, before we really need to know what Play-Doh we're playing with before we put our fingers in it. And I think it's important that people understand the priority that the charter has versus, say, an ordinance or a resolution, and for us to be able to discuss how do we want to approach looking at this. So you got to kind of know what you're playing with. So that would be my recommendations for two things on the next agenda that I'd like to go ahead and throw out to you. Does anybody else have any additional things that they feel that they would like to see on the agenda starting out? Mr. Fearborn.
Not for next week, sir, but we would like under other for Mr. Willard to give a very brief admonition regarding the Sunshine Law as it applies to this particular group before you get to your second meeting.
I think that would be fantastic. So you'd like to do that right now?
This evening, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank
please.
you, Mr. Willard.
Thank you, Mr. Fairborn. Ladies and gentlemen of the commission, congratulations and good luck. Your meetings and activities are governed by Chapter 610 of the Missouri statutes. The generic term, as Mr. Fairborn said, is the Sunshine. Okay, this better? So your meetings are subject to, and your activities are subject to the Sunshine Law, Chapter 610, which means all of these meetings are open to the public. The minutes of them will be public. You heard they're going to be taped, so you want to reflect on that when you're making comments. More important to me, or for protecting you legally, is that you need to be aware of or recall that your deliberations, meeting, and decisions need to be in these meetings. You may refer or talk to one other member outside here of a meeting, but you can't gather in groups over 3 to conduct business or make decisions or hash anything out, as that would be construed to be a violation of the Sunshine Law, because 5 of you could be a quorum and 3 of you would be enough to do business. So the magic number for talking to each other outside of this situation is 2. However, if you're going to email each other and you're going to email more than one other person, I believe Mr. Fairborn will be able to tell you we can set up some wonderful system with Raymore Charter email so that your emails, also a copy of which will get to Ms. Werner, so that they're a public record and we have a record of them. You want that so it's protected. I have had 2 of my cities sadly get into trouble this past year for perceived violation of that communication or meeting outside. And so I'm not here to scare you. I'm going to matter-of-factly tell you citizens are expecting it, and the Attorney General's office is watching like a hawk. And so we're not going to construct a charter in secret meetings at the Pit Bar and Grill. They're going to be done in here. Your communications are open record. If you want to vent about something, come in private or one-on-one, or tell Mr. Fairborn that I was a jerk in this speech, that's all fair game. But if we're going to put it out in an email, that's going to be there, and the press will have it, and we will all do it. So keep that in mind. And I know it's not the same way it is at your work, and it's not the same way at your church or your homes association, but this is a public entity, and you are an official body or commission of a public entity, and so the Sunshine Law is applicable to your records, other than if we, and I don't ever remember this group going into a closed session. Our city councils do for 3 narrow purposes. Other than that, the meetings are open to the public, and the minutes are open to the public, so please keep that in mind as you conduct them. Anything else you want me to cover on that, Mr. Fearborn?
Mr. Willett did indicate you all received an email, a confirmation email of this meeting on Friday. Did anybody not get that email? That email list, most of your email servers, and I know certainly the Google email server here, if you type in, how does it start, Jeannie?
Raymore Charter Commission.
If you start typing Raymore, it'll probably give you the option for Raymore Charter Commission. When you do that, it goes to every single one of the Charter Commission members. It goes to the mayor, myself, Ms. Warner, and both of the legal counsels who are sitting here today. So it's pretty simple. If you're going to be typing something, type to one, type to all. All you got to do is enter that one with anything you've got to say, but Ms. Warner will get that. All of those, as Mr. Willerth indicated, will be subject to Sunshine Law review.
I think another issue you probably want to handle in your first meeting, Mr. Moorhead, would be protocol of making legal inquiry. So if an individual commission member has a question, are they directed to through Mr. Fearborn or through you to come to legal counsel, or are we going to give an option that anyone can go directly to legal counsel? So think about that, sir.
Is there anything else regarding other? Mr. Wiggins?
Obviously, these are, because it's the situation is semi-formal proceedings, I guess you could call them. Do we have, obviously it's no longer summer time, but just for general respect to the city and stuff, do we have, a dress code we were trying to abide by, recommendations on how to handle absences if something comes up, you're on vacation? Obviously, those are other things, and I don't know if that's what you necessarily mean by other, but those are other things that pop into mind to establish early.
We got to get some ground rules set so we can hit the ground running. Thoughts? I mean, I will tell you from a dress and decorum, I don't have one. I mean, now granted, I guess I will say I did once have a client show up to court in a swimsuit and told the judge, well, it was either go home and change clothes, Your Honor, or show up like this on time. The response from the court was not good. But as far as if you want to come in somewhat casually, I don't think any of us would be distracted based on clothing unless there was something communicated on the clothing that in and itself would be distracting. So, I think we're going to stick to a lot of substance verbally and through exhibits more than that. So I'm not concerned about that. I'm in jeans and a work shirt today. And no, as far as professional attire, I don't think that's necessary at this point unless other people feel otherwise. As far as, and you bring it up, hi, my name is Derek and I'm an addict. I do drink a lot of soda, and we'll be meeting at 6 o'clock. And while I remember when I was a student at Avila, I was also working downtown, and I remember screaming out of the building and breaking 12 traffic laws, trying to drive to get to night school at 5:30 every night. I personally am not going to be a stickler as far as if it's 6 o'clock, it's your fault for not being here. I don't take that mentality. I want us all here comfortably. If you're going to be 2 or 3 minutes late, You know, we may end up starting 2 or 3 minutes late. We're not on television, so we don't have to worry about that. If it looks like there is going to be a time issue, I just think as a courtesy to all of us, we should communicate that though to each other. Like I said, if you know, we want you to get here comfortably, but if you need a couple of minutes, then I don't mind officially saying then we'll move the meeting to 6:10, you know, just to give everybody consistency from that standpoint. And from there, I think there's just a general, we should respect each other. So as far as, you know, if you're hungry and you need to eat, it does not offend me that food is brought in here. But if you're chomping into the microphone, that's a different story. So I think we all just need to exercise a little personal courtesy to one another, and to, you know, we'll let it go from there. If somebody strays too far out of bounds, we'll bring an issue up. But I think other than that, I feel that we're gonna have a lot of casual discussions. I am not running this meeting quite the same way as, say, a Monday night meeting is run by the mayor, in the sense that while we will have an agenda, there will be some Robert's rules. They'll be very relaxed. This is for the purpose, we want good discussion here. So I want everybody to participate. This group is gonna create some good stuff here. So I don't wanna get bogged down into procedure so bad that it stifles good conversation. So, we'll just kind of let that roll by ear too. In addition, you know, the cart sometimes does pull the horse. So if for some reason I'm inhibiting in any way, I welcome and value anybody saying, hey, could we try something a little different? You know, like I said, I think the 9 of us are going to do a great job here collectively, and I'd like to keep it that way. So does that kind of, at least from my perspective, answer the question? Cool. Any additional thoughts on that you guys have? Like I said, to me, I'm looking forward to this. If there's nothing under other, I'll quickly go to item 6, public comments. Does our member of the public wish to speak? Okay, fair enough. Seeing none, we'll close that. And at this point, I will ask for entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Second.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous. We are adjourned. Yes.
No.
Oh, wait, it's the first.
The 20th would be the third Tuesday of the month, correct?
Correct, and that will be our first meeting on the 20th.
So what day will the rehearsal be?
I'm sorry?
What day will the rehearsal be?
First meeting is Tuesday, September 20th.
You want to call Clay to pick me up, 529-4241.
529-4241.
4241.
Oh. I'll give him a call. But, you know, Charlene, will you hit your button there? All right. Okay.
This is such an old bag of all this cat hair in it.
Perfect. Was there a lot of deliberation the last time over sections?
It didn't seem like we did much changing.